Big show today. It's the SEC ACC Challenge week, and we're here all week long to break down all the action, what's going on, and one of the most exciting events in December.
The challenge has some epic matchups. We've got Auburn versus Duke, Alabama, North Carolina, Arkansas, and Kentucky both play their first true road test with new coaches, blue bloods, big tests, and March implications. This event will be turned up to 11 in excitement and elite games.
Plus, the Auburn Tigers win it all in Maui. Are they national title contenders? And we said the SEC was the best conference in basketball this year. What do the numbers say? We'll talk about it today on The Rebound. All this and more today on the Hoop Southbound Show. Holidays are absolutely a wild time of the year, especially from a sports perspective. I mean, we watched a ridiculous amount of basketball this weekend, and then of course we now got it's that time of year where a lot of football fans begin tuning into basketball as we know it. There was a lot of great action this week. You know, Maui is kind of the beginning of the holiday season for us here in the basketball world. How did you enjoy your feast week? What were some of your favorite games to watch this week?
Yeah, I mean, there were some excellent games this week. You mentioned Maui. That was a big one. And then we had a couple nail biters throughout the week. Um, those are always the most fun for me because I love nothing more than good basketball. That doesn't matter if it's, Pee Wee League, NCAA, or NBA. As long as it's a good game, I'm gonna watch. So there were quite a few really good games throughout the week, and I think a couple that may have turned out the way people were not expecting.
Yeah, no, certainly a lot of games the way people weren't turning out expecting. You know that Florida now has the longest active winning streak right now in college basketball. Now that UConn went 0-3 in Maui, wild weekend out there. But let's go ahead and let's start with the rebound here today on the show and talk about a game that happened Saturday night because I already did that bonus episode of the rebound on Saturday morning there. So this is the only game we really of note that we haven't got yet, and that is in the Players Era Festival between Alabama and Oregon. Man, this was a crazy second half in this ball game. First off, the game is tied at halftime. Come out of the locker room. Alabama has a moment where they look like they're going to run away and pull this game off. But Latrell Wrightsell goes down with an injury, and he's out for the rest of the game. Hope he's all right, and I hope he gets back on the court soon. But after that injury, Oregon gets back on their own run. They tied it up again. Oregon has this breakaway play and steal off of Grant Nelson. And then Oregon looks like they're going to get an easy layup score. But Jaron Stevenson runs at 90 miles an hour down the court. He comes up from behind and blocks the shot off the glass. It's a huge play, but the refs rule it goaltending, and they want to review this. This replay is so close that I thought watching it live or watching the replay over and over again that it looked like a good block. But instead, they just say there's not enough video evidence to overturn the call. And then what ends up happening in this is that it's a basket now for Oregon. Puts Oregon 2 points up. Keep that in mind. It looked like I said, it looked clean, not enough video evidence. It's a big call. Oregon has control. They go up by a few more scores, but it starts falling apart for them. Alabama is able to get to the foul line, but Sears misses his second shot there. Mohamed Diabate gets the offensive rebound. He's fouled. He goes to the line. We're tied. Few seconds left. Oregon takes it down the court, and they miss this floater off the rim. And there's like a nanosecond there. I'm thinking we're about to go to overtime. But then Biddle for Oregon comes in flying, grabs this rebound, and just slams the crud out of the rim enough to where you think he's about to rip it down. It's a thunderous dunk. The entire everybody who's there is losing their mind. Oregon's bench is losing their mind. Alabama's down to one play. Oregon's up two. Sears runs the length of the floor. He drives to the paint there in just a couple of seconds, and he dishes it out when he's got two defenders there on him. He dishes it to Grant Nelson, who's on the other side of the paint, right at the basket. Nelson goes up, puts it in, no problem. We're going to overtime, except clock went off with less than a tenth of a second. It's like a tenth of a second fraction that Grant Nelson's a little too late on this shot. Oregon survives. They're champs in Vegas. Alabama comes in second. Maddie, did you have any thoughts on this game? Because it was a good one. It was a good one for anybody who was just, cashing out of the Texas A&M Texas game there on in football last night to see who was going to go to Atlanta. This was your nightcap. You have to watch that second half alone. It was a great ball game.
Yeah, this was one of the big games I was talking about when I said a lot of games turned out the way people didn't expect them to. I think the biggest indication for me in this game with Alabama, you had three huge shots that were missed by one by Stevenson and two by Sears with under 2 minutes left. You got to make those count. I mean, I felt like it was pretty sloppy play with the Tide in the final 2 minutes. And if you want to be considered and stay considered with the best of the best, you need to close out these games. I mean, we talk about momentum builders all the time. I think that goaltending call was a momentum buster for the Tide. I think, if that would have gone a different way, we would have seen a completely different last couple of minutes of this game. But that was my biggest concern here is if you can't close out a game like this, are you still one of the best basketball teams?
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's really good. Like, let's give Oregon credit where I mean, they played really well throughout the Players Era Fest, and Dana Altman always seems to have, if Oregon's not in the NCAA tournament, they're close to being in the NCAA tournament. Dana Altman's a really good coach. And this was a challenging game for Alabama, but you're right. They got to hit some shots. This team's got to hit some shots, especially when you're getting offensive rebounds late in the game and you're fighting for everything. You're figuring out ways to get the foul line. Got to hit a couple of those shots as well. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more because one of the big results of this week is that I think we got a test or we got a taste for some of the teams that are looking right now like national championship level teams that should be in that title conversation. So I mean that's kind of what Feast Week holds, Maddie. I don't know who do you think Alabama's is a national championship team? Hold that thought. We're going to get to it in just a second.
And then also on the rebound, Texas A&M also won their last game in the Players Era Festival against Rutgers. So congratulations to them. One of those teams that we're kind of looking on that line of are they going to make a run in the tournament or not? So I think that was a big indication for them that maybe they're turning things around.
Yeah, this was to me like Texas A&M picked up a good win against Rutgers. Rutgers is a pretty darn good basketball team, and they should be in the title race, or not the title race, but the tournament race somewhere to at least right now be like an 8-9 seed is where I kind of think they'll end up. And it's a really talented team. This isn't Rutgers from the last couple of years or what you normally expect out of Rutgers. So it was a good win for Texas A&M.
All right. So after a crazy and dominant feast week for the SEC, some national title conversations went flying around the country, and a few SEC teams are starting to make some noise for that case. David, you talked about it in the bonus episode of The Rebound Saturday morning. The Auburn Tigers saw their stock rise, the highest that it's been in a long time after that Maui tournament. So, what are your thoughts on the SEC teams that might make a case right now?
Yeah, so Feast Week is like the first check-in point of the season. The next one will be in a few weeks when we have the infamous Week 6 AP poll when it comes out. But coming out of Feast Week, we get a real idea of who these teams are, at least here early in the season. Additionally, a lot of national champions also win their MTs. So this is a good check-in point here. So here's what we're going to have the conversation today around when we talk about these national title contenders. Instead of like having hot talk, hot take talk and go like, are they, do they look good? We're going to go back to the model that we use in March and we were showing you guys in the preseason. And we're going to show you where those numbers stand right now on a few of these teams that, like we're going to be like, hey, this team looks really good. Hey, this team looks really good. And these are the factors that we mentioned are used in March by a lot of big time Vegas gamblers, like those guys who are putting down $500,000 on a bet. So, in this last year's model also identified 3 of the 4 teams that were in the Final Four for us last year, and they were and the model was exactly right on the national championship game. So we're going to show you those factors. Now, first off, before I keep going deeper into this, there are more factors that are going to be added throughout the year, but this is what we get a flavor for at this point in time before we start adding in more and more factors to give us a clearer picture. So let's go ahead and start with that Maui winning team, the Auburn Tigers. Certainly made some noise in Feast Week with their run. But the things that we're looking for right here, right now, we're looking at who's leading this team from a scoring standpoint, the 3-point shooting, and the defensive efficiency. Preseason last year numbers indicated that Janai Broome, JP Pegues, and Miles Kelly might be the leading scorers for this Auburn team. all upperclassmen on right now for or all upperclassmen there. You want two of the three to be upperclassmen at least on your roster. This roster also shot 35.6% from three last year. You want to be at 36%, and Auburn was sixth in the country in defensive efficiency. You want to be somewhere in the top 40. We said Auburn had like a 2.75 out of three boxes checked on the preseason champions index coming into the year. They shoot a little bit better. They could be in the hunt. To this point, Auburn checking all boxes, man. Janai Broome, Chad Baker-Mazara, and Denver Jones lead this team. All upperclassmen. Last year's numbers weren't too far off, by the way. Miles Kelly is averaging double digits and is in the top five for Auburn in scoring as well. Auburn's shooting 36.3% from three so far this year. That's another box checked. And the Tigers are again sixth right now in defensive efficiency in the country to start this season off. All boxes checked so far on the board. Again, add more as the year goes on, as more data comes out, but they're looking pretty good, and they aren't doing this against joke teams. Auburn has beat Houston, Iowa State, North Carolina, and Memphis, who look pretty darn good also out there in Maui. Maddie, are the Tigers national title contenders?
I had this conversation with one of my friends the other day talking about how well Auburn's doing against some elite competition. They try to talk here and there about a couple different teams, but I said no. I said you have to look here. Auburn has beaten Houston. They've beaten Iowa State, which is an okay team.
They're
North Carolina,
good. Come on, give Iowa State their flowers. Come on, they're a good basketball team.
and then Memphis, who I'm always a fan of. But after you beat a team that beats UConn,
Yeah,
some things are starting to roll here. So, I always like to give Auburn a hard time, but I think in the SEC, Auburn is the front runner for a national title contender at this point.
they definitely look the case. They're experienced. I still hold, and it's accurate. There won't be like a ton of NBA draft picks coming out of this team. There'll be some free agents and some guys who come in the second round. And depending on how Tahad Pettiford plays, he might be a first rounder throughout the rest of this year. We're gonna see how that goes. But this team's so experienced. They've played together. It's no surprise that they're playing this well early in the season. That's a lot of those roster items that Evan Mia does a lot of data on and says, like, look at this team, look at this team, look at this team. All that research that went down this offseason. So it's no shock to me that Auburn looks really good in November. And the resume looks really, really good. If they continue to play at this level right here, this is a national championship winning team. Like, this is a team that is poised to go very deep into March, will make the Final Four no matter who they're playing. If they play at this level, they got to maintain that. And it doesn't hurt to have Janai Broome going for 20 points a game and putting up a double-double every night. Certainly doesn't. And he's definitely a leader on this team. And sometimes the combination of having an experienced team and having the best player in college basketball is exactly what you're looking for to make a deep run in March. And yeah, Auburn looks good. They look the part. They look like they should be having it. And the only reason that the AP poll on Monday wouldn't have Auburn as the number one team in the country is because Kansas hasn't done anything to lose that number one spot yet. That's the only reason, because Auburn looks darn good and they look like the best team in the country. And Ken Palm agrees. But yeah, that's where we are right now with.
So, David, I'm going to throw you a curveball here.
Okay, go for it.
So, if they continue to play like this, say midway through SEC, is Janai Broome in the running for National Player of the Year?
He already is. He's like the front runner right now. You can't play like he did right now in Maui. And, he was already in the conversation at the beginning of the year as like kind of an outside shot. He's displayed that he is a contender and a front runner right now. To me, he is the number one player in the country right now. So until somebody else steps up, it's Janai Broome. Janai Broome is the best player in college basketball at this moment. Let's go to the rival. All right, Alabama just came off that second place run in the Players Era Festival. They played some good competition out there in Las Vegas and got a few good wins. Coming into the season, Champions Index had Mark Sears, Chris Youngblood, and Houston Mallett as the leading scorers. The roster was shooting 37.8% from three, and the big concern this year was going to be the defense. So far this year, Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, and Latrell Wrightsell are your leaders. Chris Youngblood has been injured, so no real shock he's not on the list yet. The Tigers shooting 32.6% from three. well outside that number that we A thought they could shoot and about 4% off the number they need to be at. And Alabama is right now 49th in defensive efficiency, outside that top 40, but a major improvement from last season. Maddie, this was the preseason number one pick for the SEC media poll. We both had Alabama number one. They were a Final Four team last year. Are the Crimson Tide right now coming out of Fee Sweet national title contenders?
I mean, they've definitely slid down my list. Um, Looking at Alabama, especially when you look at last night's game and the inability to close it out, is my big concern. You've had a couple of games that have been close in the end, and they just couldn't pull away. So I think this is my big concern for Alabama right now is not being able to finish a game. And you're not a national title contender if you can't come out and finish a game, especially big ones like you see against Oregon, like you saw against Purdue. Games like that, you've got to win.
Yeah. They're not right now, in my opinion. Like, look, they're shooting that 32. Like, the defense is better. Let's start there. Let's give them credit where credit is due
Definitely.
because they're 70 spots better in Ken Palm. They deserve some respect for that. And bringing in an assistant coach from the NBA to help on defense has paid big dividends to helping this team out. But it was also supposed to help on the offensive end so Nate Oates could focus more on the offense and get it even better this season. It's not. The offense right now is playing worse here in the early portion of the season. Could it get better? Absolutely. And I'm not just talking about Chris Youngblood coming back from injury. Mark Sears isn't playing his best ball right now. He dude's shooting like 33% from the field. He's not even hitting like anywhere close to the rate that he was hitting threes last season. So there are some concerns there that this offense is just not there yet. Mark Sears isn't playing the best of his ability yet this season. It's rough, but they're still a good basketball team. And we'll probably turn around and have this conversation later in the year and say, yeah, they are national title contenders. But here, first day of December, when we're recording this show, they're not yet. They look like they're going to be maybe a second weekend team. This is the thoughts process of maybe a Sweet 16 team. Exactly what we kept talking about with Alabama all of last season. So maybe they shock us again, but they do not look the part of a national title team yet because they're just not checking all those boxes. And that to me right now is the big concern. They could beat Oregon right now if they're playing their best basketball. They probably win the Players Era Festival. They might come away with a win against Purdue there in West Lafayette if they're playing at their top tier of basketball. Auburn right now is closer to that ceiling. They're closer to that preseason ceiling we are talking about. Alabama's got a long way to go. And granted, there's a long season ahead, so they could get there, but like they're not there yet. They're not there yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's one of those teams that, I think they have a great fan base riding behind them. I think they have, an excellent outlook on the future, but right now they aren't proving that. I
Yeah,
think,
and
they'll have to prove themselves now in SEC play because they are slipping a little bit in non-conference. But I think SEC play is really what's going to determine if they're going to be one of those national title contenders.
yeah, I mean it's just a strange situation. We all thought Alabama was going to come in and be able to shoot. They had 40% shooters from last year from three, and this team shooting below one out of every three baskets from the field right now from deep. Shockingly, Arkansas, who Kentucky fans say can't shoot, is shooting better than Alabama from three right now. Like that should be something that should tell you about how far Alabama, a team that emphasizes the 3-point shot, is not meeting their own standards right now and their own expectations. Like that should be a conversation. Arkansas's checking as many boxes as Alabama at this point in the season, and everyone's sitting there going, "Oh, Arkansas should improve once you get Janelle Davis better involved in the offensive game plan and Jonas Adu come back. For Alabama, it's getting Chris Youngblood black and getting Mark Sears on pace. Like that's where we are. Like these two teams, outside the wins, Alabama's obviously got the better resume than Arkansas, but the numbers think both these teams are about the same right now. Alabama's a really good basketball team, and honestly, I had them. They should be closer to Auburn, but they're just not there yet in November right now. They should to get there. They should have the ability. We're going to see what happens. Let's go ahead and let's turn to Tennessee. Coming in, Volunteers had Darling Stone DeBar, Chaz Lanier, and Igor Milicic circled as their leading scorers, all upperclassmen. Their leaders to this point are Chaz Lanier, Igor Milicic, and Zakai Ziegler. all upperclassmen. This roster shot 37.3% from three last year. They're currently shooting 38% so far. Last year, they were the third best defensive team, and currently, they are the second best defensive team in the country. All boxes checked for Tennessee. Maddie, you had Tennessee as your preseason number two team in the SEC. How do you feel about them now? Are they national title contenders?
I think I'm going to shock some people here and say not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I
Why's
I
that?
think Tennessee is a fantastic basketball team, but when you look at the level of competition they've played up to this point, it's not really proven much for me. You've got that win against Baylor in the Baja Mar Championship, which was a great win, but probably their best win to date so
I mean,
far.
that
So I
Louisville
think,
game is looking really good right now. Like Louisville,
yeah,
is looking. I mean, they're getting up there right now in the net or in Kimpom.
yeah, but I think to rebuttal that, you look at Auburn's resume at this point. I think they are clear national title contenders, the best in the SEC at this point. They've played much better competition. So I just need to see a couple more high caliber games out of Tennessee. You've got some decent, I think Baylor was ranked number 13th when they played them. So I mean you've got some good games in there. I just need to see more of them. I definitely don't think they're out of question for the race, but I just need to see a little bit more high caliber competition played and wins from Tennessee to consider them national title contenders at this point.
I think they're playing like it. I think they're close. I mean, obviously, I don't have them as my front runner in the SEC for this, but there are several good teams in the SEC who can win a national championship depending on how the bracket shapes out. I would say Tennessee is one of those teams. They may not be my put the money on them, but they would look like a good team that has a shot. So I would call them national title contenders. They just wouldn't be my number one national title contender right now. And who knows, when we see some more competition, when we get into SEC play, that picture could totally change. But they, to me, look,
Definitely.
they're checking the boxes. They look like a good basketball team to me right now. And of course, they won an MTE, which is always a pretty darn good sign. All right.
I
Are
mean, I
you
don't
ready?
think they're out of the running at all. Before I just say, yeah, they can be national champions. I need to see,
You just
them
want to
play a
see
team.
more. You want to
Yeah,
see more
exactly.
before you pass judgment. Okay. I could get that. To me, like I said, they look good right now.
Mhm.
And I think they have the opportunity to look better. And like it's if it's resume that's hanging you up, I would say the numbers look really good.
Yeah.
It should reflect in the resume later on, but we'll see. We'll see. It's basketball, and there's a reason we play the game. Are you ready for Big Blue Nation to go wild? Let's talk about Kentucky. Now, Kentucky is in their first year of a coaching situation, so we looked at it a little bit different because there is no true way to identify everything in the preseason with a first year head coach, but we do our best to try to reflect the model. The three identified players for Kentucky were Ainsley Allamore, Jackson Robinson, and Andrew Carr, all upperclassmen. I think we said we do not anticipate for Ainsley Allamore to be there, and if we didn't, we should have said it because like there was not a lot of consideration on that of him being there, and I think we were all like, someone else is going to step into that number three spot. Interestingly enough, none of these guys are there. Leaders are Atego Away, Lamont Butler, and Kobe Brea, but Robinson and Carr are fourth and fifth, so the model's not too far off. They're getting double digits, so close enough, really, for everyone who's an upperclassman. This roster's full of upperclassmen. We're no surprise here they were going to check this box. The roster shot 38.8% last year from three. This season, they're shooting 38.2% from three, down from last year, but certainly above that 36%. And here's the big thing. Last year at BYU, Pope's Cougars were 60th in defensive efficiency last season. Currently, Kentucky, they are 30th in defensive efficiency. Maddie, you had them fifth in the SEC. Mark Pope's first season. Are they national title contenders?
I mean, I've definitely been shocked up to this point with Kentucky. They've gone on an excellent run in the beginning of basketball season. And, I think there's a glimmer of hope for them. I don't want to say that they're national title contenders yet, because to me, Mark Pope's program, the way he runs his basketball team, I feel like it's going to die out. I don't know what it is. It's just something inside of me that says somebody's going to come up and stop them, which I could be completely wrong on. I hope I'm completely wrong because I want this basketball season to be as interesting as possible. But for some reason, there is just something inside of me that says they're going to die out at some point. And
Well,
nothing like big, but I think it's going to be against, high caliber team that's got, you know, years of experience playing together. Maybe it's Auburn, but somebody's going to come along and stop them because you can't just have the run and gun system and not expect it to fail at some point.
Well, I hear exactly what you're saying. Um, I think I know your point. Your point is that there are other good teams out there, and that's kind of the concern here. The numbers are really good, and they showed that they can beat talented teams like Duke. I think they're going to have a test that's going to tell us more actually here in the ACC-SEC title challenge game here because it's a true road test against a team that's a little bit more veteran. And I mean, I said it this week watching that Kansas Duke game was like I have never seen freshmen so hard out there freshmen and then the Duke freshmen like it's wild how bad that's gotten. And so for me, I'm with you. I think something can happen. I think a veteran team is going to be a problem, especially when you get in the Neville Arena or somewhere in the tournament when you have a close game and a team that's close to home, and gets their fans out there, and it's a big time program similar to Kentucky. Like I think they would have a hard time with that. I still think though you've got a lot of good things here happening for Kentucky
Definitely.
because they're experienced. They shoot the crud out of the ball, and they're playing better defense than a lot of people anticipated. Because like Mark Pope's system does leave players a little bit dry in the way that they play offense, go into that defensive transition, but they have good defensive players, which is making up for it right now. So right now, I'd say yeah, Kentucky's got an outside shot to making, some noise in March and being a national title contender. If anything, this should have a chance. This should have a chance to get Kentucky back to the second weekend, which they are pleading for. But do they have that ceiling to get to a national championship? There's about a space about that big right now. I think there is. And I think that should be enough to hold on to some hope. Is it the biggest percentage? No, but could that be enough to get you to a Final Four in the first year for Mark Pope? Like, tell me that wouldn't get fans going crazy. Kentucky's good. Kentucky's a really good basketball team. And we kind of said it in the preseason. Like, if we're looking for a team with a high ceiling, like, we put them right in the middle of the SEC because their roster's not perfect, but this team's got an extremely high season or ceiling. And we talked about like some other shows, like, Matt Norlander was putting Kentucky second in the SEC and Gary Parrish was putting them like seventh, eighth. And we were like, over here, like, I can see both. I can see both because the SEC is so hard. It's so deep this year. It's insane. On the flip side of that, like Kentucky's got a roster that if you put it in a weaker conference, they might run away with the conference. So
Yeah.
like there's a extremely high roster here with a lot of potential. So I like Kentucky's chances, especially this modernized offensive approach for Kentucky. I know the Big Blue Nation's having fun right now. This is a good basketball team and one that does have a national championship hope right now. I want to see it against a little bit deeper competition other than Duke, which honestly, like the youth on Duke is my biggest concern with them moving
Mhm.
forward. Here's the thing. As of Saturday morning, there are 8 SEC teams in the top 40 in defensive efficiency. There are 5 teams shooting better than 36% from three, 3 more that are shooting better than 34.5% or better and could make a jump to get to that 36% threshold. And the way the conference has retained and hit the portal this season, I'm sure a lot of those teams have 2 out of 3 of their leading scorers as upperclassmen. That's how deep this conference is this season. We might have 7 teams right now that need to be circled and be in this conversation. That's nearly half the conference. Half the conference could be in a national title conversation here at the end of November, which leads us exactly in to our next talking point. Do y'all remember at the beginning of the season when Maddie said this? The investment that the SEC as a whole has made over the years to basketball is arguably putting in its greatest product this year, right now. Maddie, just how strong do you think this conference is this season?
I mean, not to be biased, but I think the SEC is the best basketball conference this year.
I don't know, guys. Maybe Maddie was onto something. I'm just saying, maybe the SEC is the best conference in basketball. Maddie, how are you
Maybe I know a
feeling
few
about
things.
this? Do what?
I said maybe I know a few things.
Maybe you know a few things. Maybe the comment section with that guy going, I'm going to laugh at how bad this take is when the Big 12 beats everybody's butt. Do you know what the Big 12's record is right now against the SEC here to start the season? Because that's the conference everybody's got circled as the best conference in basketball. And that's the conference that's investing to be the best conference in basketball. They're 2-9. against the SEC. The Big 12 is 2-9 in the month of November against the SEC. Here's the list. Auburn beat Iowa State and Houston. Tennessee beat Baylor. LSU, who is picked to the bottom of the SEC, beat Kansas State and UCF. Mississippi State beat Utah. Alabama beat Houston. Oklahoma beat Arizona. Another team picked to the bottom against a top 25 Big 12 team at the time. And then Ole Miss just beat BYU. No Big 12 team has beaten an SEC team outside of their home state right now. That goes the only losses for the SEC was Baylor beating Arkansas, an injured Arkansas team at that, by 5 in Dallas, and the opening night loss when Texas A&M went on the road to Orlando to play UCF at UCF. That's it. Those are the losses right now, the entire time with the Big 12 against the SEC. Against the rest of the Power Five, well, right now the SEC is 10-1 against the ACC. That includes like wins like Kentucky beating Duke, Auburn beating North Carolina, Tennessee and Oklahoma beating Louisville, who is currently fifth in the ACC according to KenPom, and a top 40 KenPom team. The only ACC team to win is Pitt, who is good, beat LSU at a neutral site. LSU, no offense, Tiger fans, is the 11th best team in the SEC according to KenPom. This is a beating right now. The Big Ten and Big East actually do have a lead over the SEC, but it's really close. And most of those wins for those conferences are coming from teams that you would expect to be the best in that conference. Purdue, Marquette, Illinois, and a few others. And those wins are against teams like South Carolina, Georgia, and teams that are power ranked in the SEC right now from us are in like ninth-ish and below. The best win is Purdue against Alabama in West Lafayette, which is a really good win at home, but it's still at home. And the best win for the Big East is maybe Butler beating Mississippi State in a neutral site. Well, flip that. Georgia has a neutral site win over top 20 KenPom team St. John's, and Texas A&M has a home, granted it's at home, but against top 20 KenPom team Ohio State, and Alabama has a neutral site win against top 15 Illinois. There are 4 SEC teams currently in the top 10 in KenPom. There are 5 top 15, 9 top 40, 12 top 50, and every SEC team is currently in the top 80 in KenPom. If KenPom looks like the net, every SEC road game would be a quad 1 game except for South Carolina, and they would come across as a very good quad 2 game if you played them on the road right now. There are power conferences out there that are going to have quad 3 road games, folks. And the SEC is flirting with every single game in conference play right now being a quad 1 game when conference play starts. Last year, KenPom had the Big 12 as the best conference in basketball. They had a rating of 16.66. The SEC thus far is the number 1 conference according to KenPom, and they're rated at 18.93. KenPom is ranking the SEC nearly 2.3 points stronger than the Big 12 last year. The computers love the SEC. The media loves the SEC. The wins love the SEC. Is this football? Are we playing football right now? Because this is what I expect out of SEC. We talked about it off camera, Maddie. Here at the beginning of the season, we didn't think folks who are more casual basketball fans would realize how incredible the SEC is going to be this season because we've never seen the conference this strong. It has never been this good. This is going to be a historic season for this conference. Maddie, your thoughts right now on the SEC being as strong as it is?
I mean, like you said, we talked about it. You've got Alabama who went to a Final Four. You've got Tennessee who was in the Elite Eight. You've got teams that, have completely overturned, but got good pieces from the transfer portal, got good first-year coaching staffs, and got good freshmen coming in. And the SEC continues to get stronger and stronger little by little. And I think it's finally starting to kind of smack everybody in the face because, hey, we're here and we're not quiet this year. And it's not going to.
It was a long time ago when the SEC network was invested. The conference knew that the one way that they could keep a good product on television throughout the year on this network was to invest in basketball because you're going to have more basketball games than football games you can put on that network. It's a big deal during football season, but they said invest your football money, bring in good coaches, make good investments into your programs, update your facilities, and we'll put the best basketball product we can put on, and it's going to fill the SEC network every night. And we're going to have good television throughout the year, except for that dead period during when college sports comes to an end for the year, and then we're going to walk right into preseason football. Like the conference made an investment because they saw an opportunity with basketball, and right now this is the result. It took a minute, but this is a historic season right now for the SEC that we're sitting on the cusp of. Comment section, I want you guys to tell us. The record for the most teams from a single conference in the NCAA tournament is 11 by the Big East. Does the SEC break that record? In 2016, the ACC had 6 teams in the Sweet 16. Does the SEC break that record? The same year, the ACC had 4 teams in the Elite Eight. Does the SEC break that record this year? And finally, the Big East is the only conference to have 3 teams in the Final Four. Does the SEC break that record or meet it? Go ahead, guys. Fill it up in the comment section. Fill it in the chat while we're hanging out here during the premiere of this video. Guys, we want to know your opinions on it. How good do you think this conference is? Because right now, we're on the boat of it being a darn good conference. And in the month of November, they established a lot of dominance. And here we are. It's the start of December, and they're going to face it off against another Power 5 conference, the ACC, for the ACC-SEC Challenge. Maddie, let's go ahead and let's take a look at this bad boy. Let's start off with game one, and then when we go through the games that we're previewing here, we'll give our opinion on who wins the challenge and everything else. Let's start off with first game on Tuesday night and the fun games that are going to be ahead on Tuesday.
Yeah, so let's dive into this one. Mark Pope hits the road to face the Clemson Tigers in his first true road test as the head coach of Kentucky. We've got Kentucky versus Clemson to start off the challenge.
Yeah, big test for Pope. We've seen Kentucky play great in a neutral site game in the Champions Classic. Let's see how this team does with a crowd that's going to be totally against them. Tough for any team, and Clemson does a pretty good job of getting folks in the arena already. I'm sure Kentucky will draw a crowd for them as well. So like that's going to be huge. Some takes on Clemson. Chase Hunter is the guard to watch out for the Clemson Tigers. He's leading this team in points, game high points, 3-point field goals made. Clemson only knocks down about 9 threes a game, and he's getting about a third of that. I say only, that's still a pretty high rate compared to a lot of teams in basketball. You're going to see a lot of threes in this game. The other guard is to really note is Jaden Zachary. He's not putting up a ton of points right now, but he's averaged higher than what he was producing in years past. He can also get you about 3 assists a night, and he hasn't turned down the ball much. Turned over the ball much doing so. Then in the front court, the biggest thing to note on this Clemson front court is that this team no longer has PJ Hall. He's in the NBA. So in this offseason, Clemson was supposed to have RJ Godfrey fill those minutes in the season, but instead he transferred to Georgia. So they're returning Ian Shefflin. Shefflin was kind of Robin to PJ's Batman last season, and he was kind of tough to deal with. This year, Shefflin is playing a much larger role on the team. He's averaging 30 minutes a night. That's a lot of minutes for a forward. He's a good shooter. He can hit from 3, but he's not a volume guy. He hits about 1 3 a night, and that's just, part of his offensive game. It's right there, but he can come down. He can pull rebounds. He puts up about 12 to 15 points a night. He's averaging a double-double right now a night to start the year. He makes his free throws. Not a guy that you want to put on the line either. He can also distribute the ball well. And then at center, you got Victor Lakin. He isn't logging as many minutes, but he's scoring efficiently, and he's getting around 11 points a game. But not grabbing those boards. But he's still a really good player. He is pulling down about 5. He provides some brim protection as well there in the half-court game. And then Chauncey Wiggins is another notable forward on this team. Not going to be a guy who puts up a ton of points, but you get to see some production for him in this one. Maddie, kind of thoughts on how Kentucky compares to Clemson on this one? Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here, you mentioned it a little bit in your notes there, is going to be the gaps in the front court. Obviously, Clemson without PJ Hall, without RJ Godfrey. So I think the biggest player to watch here is going to be Chase Hunter. Like you said, it's going to bring the battle to the backcourt. So I think when Kentucky's sizing this up, they need to focus on front court productivity because that is going to be the easiest way for them to get points here.
I dig that. I dig that take. I think that Mark Pope has multiple ways to attack this. Clemson is a team that likes to use big men as leaders. How Pope uses his big men is interesting to me. We talked about it this offseason. Amari Williams, despite the talent and ability, doesn't exactly fit into the Mark Pope offensive game plan in the way that he likes to run it, or similar to how he likes to run in the BYU. And the numbers are kind of matching up with that expectation we had for him right now. But this could be a big night for him and Brandon Garrison. Not so much on the offensive end, but from rim protection, defense they provide. Perfect example of how this could play out was against Clemson when Alabama played them there in the Elite Eight last year. Pringle had a big impact on that game, really big impact, and not the best center big man in the world. And like Alabama last year, Kentucky has guys that can force Clemson to be highly proficient on the offensive end. Kentucky is loaded with shooters, guys capable of getting multiple threes a game. Brea Butler away and Andrew Carr. They've got dudes who can attack and really put pressure on Clemson's offense to be highly proficient. So I like that part of it. If Kentucky could turn this into a scoring race, I like their chances. But you gotta hit your shots on the road. That's the tough challenge here. So kind of my thoughts.
Definitely. I mean, this could be a huge one for Kentucky. You've seen them prove themselves against Duke. And if they continue to prove themselves against higher caliber basketball programs, people are going to start believing the hype, me included.
Yeah, right.
All right, so Kim Palm has this game as 78-76, Clemson at a 44% confidence rate. Those are some slim margins. David, what are you thinking with this one?
Yeah, it's big win time. It is big win time. So my pick in this game, I am gonna go Mark Pope and Kentucky in this one. Looking for a big win here on the road. There's gonna be some road wins for the SEC in this thing, even against some of the stronger competition for the SEC. I'm going with this one. I like the ability of Mark Pope's team to shoot. And I think he's got this team really playing at a high level right now. They got some momentum behind them as well. So I'm looking for them to collect that first big road win of the year. Maddie?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with turning this into a scoring race. If Kentucky is hitting their shots, I think they win this one. I think it's still going to be a battle, but I think they are going to come out ahead. I think we're probably seeing something more like low 80s to high 70s.
Okay. So you're pretty much where the numbers at. What team are you going with?
Yeah, I'm going with Kentucky.
Okay, Maddie goes with Kentucky in this one. Well, last week we were talking about how Arkansas needs to put something together, some wins here, and here's another chance. This time the Razorbacks are heading to Coral Gables to face the Miami Hurricanes. I don't care if this game is the road. It's time to find something to put on your resume if you're Arkansas. And Miami right now is in a wounded position. They're in wounded animal mode, just taking a loss to Charleston Southern. Really, really need to win this game if you're the Razorbacks. Maddie, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Hogs need a win here if there are plans to continue looking at a promising tournament team. We are catching, like you said, a very desperate Miami team going into this one, but a team reeking of desperation could be dangerous. The Hurricanes are on a 4-game losing streak, not to mention that terrible loss that they just took. And when it comes to the stats, if you look at these, I mean, these two teams are pretty well matched. So I think this is going to be a, a rock fight. You've got Arkansas winning the boards at 1.7 a game. The assists are completely even, and the field goal percentage is even as well. And then you've got Miami winning it at 3.1 points per game.
Yeah,
So
really,
you've
really.
got very similarly matched teams here. So I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a rock fight, and hopefully the Hogs can do something, but this Miami team looks to be dangerous coming off of that 4-game losing streak.
My stress as a Razorback fan has never been higher in my life given these circumstances. But yeah, let's talk about this a little bit more. These are teams that play very different styles of ball and are very different. Arkansas is fast and plays tough defense and wants to get out in transition. Miami is a slower paced team that plays controlled and is a very proficient offensive team with a poor defense. Let's go through some of these players in this one. The number one guy for Miami in the backcourt is Nigel Pack. He's a K-State transfer, several years of experience at the college level. He's a good scorer. He can shoot from range. He can also move the ball very well. A lot of quickness in his game as well. Then Pack is also paired up with Jalen Blackman and Matthew Cleveland, who are capable scorers, but not quite to the level Pack is. But Blackman is a good scorer and someone that is always going to hit some threes. He's capable of being a leading scorer when Pack's maybe off. AJ Stanton McCray is also a guy you're going to see in this game most likely. He's going to play some really good defense, but he's not going to be a primary scoring threat. And then Divine, hope I'm pronouncing this right, Yugo Chukwu is their freshman guard and backup point guard. He's a very efficient scorer, but you're only likely to see about 10 minutes a game from him. In the front court, you got two guys that are going to be primarily featured, Lynn Kidd and Brandon Johnson. Lynn Kidd is more of the efficient scorer type, traditional five-man. He's a decent rebounder, but he's capable of putting up a good amount of points. He doesn't get to the free throw line a lot, at least not this season, but he shoots free throws very well for a big guy, and he hasn't missed this season, and he shot around 85% last year. Don't put him on the line, kids. Brandon Johnson is a good primary four, option five kind of guy. He's a utility style player. He can hit from three. He's the best rebounder on this team. He plays good defense. He can pass a little, gives you a little bit of rim protection. He's played a ton of minutes. He's the guy that's likely you're putting a Duthiero on. That's kind of the matchup look here. Look, my opinion, Maddie, Arkansas's got their work cut out for them in this game. Arkansas definitely has more talent than Miami, but Miami is experienced and their guys can be very productive. They're looking for a win. They need it. And just like Arkansas needs a win. And I don't think Miami has played their best basketball yet this season by any means. I think things kind of snowballed on them in Charleston like they did UConn and Maui. I expect this to be a closer game than what a lot of people think it's going to be. It's going to be uncomfortable, especially if you're an Arkansas fan. Yeah. And if Arkansas comes out playing like they did against Illinois, then folks, that's bad. Cannot play like he did against Illinois in this game. Boogie Flan's got to get back to getting his numbers. He really had a poor game there against Illinois. And then something. I need to see some Janelle Davis, man. Like, got to get him involved in this game plan. He's a player that's got to be there. And if Jonas Anu is still out, you got to have a good game from Big Z. He has to play defensively well against Lynn Kidd. And then Adut the Arrow has to outplay Brandon Johnson. If you do those things, you can win. They're capable of winning this game. If you don't do these things, we're going to have a problem. It's going to be gross. Maddie, kind of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Arkansas's got their work cut out for them, but we need a win here
Yeah,
because, like you said, if we can't start turning some things around, beating teams like Miami, especially after a 4-game losing streak to Charleston Southern, and you can't beat this team, we have bigger questions that need to be answered. I mean,
absolutely.
you know, we talked about Coach Cal quite a bit when he was on the Kentucky side, and I think we're going to have to start having some of those same conversations if we can't start seeing more wins produced here.
And we talked about this on Saturday. We'll save it for now. It's not time, but it will be time if they lose this game, more than likely. I think Arkansas needs to do two things. One thing, I think you want to speed up Miami to where you have to keep pace with your game plan, and you can attack this not great defense they have. But you also want to speed them up and not let them be methodical on the offensive end. You need to be attacking at all times. So attack the rim, get out in transition like Arkansas wants to do. You want to outrun Miami. You're hitting about 50% of your shots or better. We're talking about getting there in the paint and getting easy buckets. This is a game where Arkansas can be successful running in this game. If DJ Wagner is successful driving, it can tilt things in Arkansas's favor. So stay on attack, play really good defense. Kim Palm has this game 78-75 for Arkansas at 62%. Maddie, I'm going with it. Hogs need a win, and in that 2022 or 2022 season, 2022-2023 season, Cal, after he had that bad loss to Gonzaga and a lot of other things, turned and found one good win in that non-conference, and it was against Michigan there in London. I think this is kind of that Michigan-London game if this is going to be like the 2022-2023 season for Cal. So I think this is the game right here where Cal gets a win and people get back on track just a little bit. So I'm going Arkansas on this one. Arkansas needs it. Where are you going?
Yeah, I like the Hogs here. Like you said, Miami's pretty methodical in the things that they do. So I think Arkansas's defense is going to be able to get in there and disrupt that, get into those passing lanes. Just prove you're dominant on the defensive end and make those points off of transition and win this game how you've been winning games.
Yep,
Get those transitionary points, and I think we're good to go on here.
absolutely. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah, so there is going to be a lot of orange in TBA this week. Tennessee is looking to get another win at home, and against the team they faced last year, too, Tennessee takes on Syracuse.
Yeah, good game here. You got to start the conversation about Syracuse. JJ Starling, most important returner for this team this year. He's early in the year. Starling is the leader in 3-point field goals made. He's a very efficient scorer and he gets things going. However, he also leads this team in fouls per game. So you get him in some foul trouble as well. Front court is likely causing the most problems for Tennessee. Chris Bell is an athletic wing. He's an effective scorer. Then Colorado transfer Eddie Lampkin is also a huge problem at the 5 spot and is a force in the paint. Jared Davis is also a forward that's very effective in putting up points in a hurry. This is going to be a game where Tennessee has a few areas to address. If they can address them, they'll likely take home a W in this one, and they should. First, I don't know if Tennessee has the best defensive answer for Chris Bell. It's a tough matchup, and I can see him being a big threat on that end of the court and something that you're going to have to figure out how to limit. I don't know who exactly you put onto him because he can shoot and he's got some size on some guys, and then you have a bigger guy on. You can put a bigger guy on him. What's for the answer for him athletically? And then he does some really good things. Also, getting to the foul line presents the largest problem here. Barnes might have to try multiple guys in his line to production, and Bell has played his best ball against P5 competition so far this season. He had 7 3-point field goals, put up a combined 33 points against Texas and Texas Tech this season. Those games were higher than his averages. Problem two is going to require good games out of the 5 spot. Lampkin is going to have to require. Lampkin is a good 5 man. And it's going to require Estrella and Okpara to have really good games defensively. And Lampkin is really tearing up teams with weaker defensive front courts. But I think this is the front court and defensively is a strength for Tennessee. So I really feel confidence there. You have to maintain that level of performance, though, against Eddie Lampkin. Volunteers should have the advantage of the backcourt, especially now that Lanier is playing to his potential. Tennessee has a lot more in that area to overwhelm Syracuse. The guard play is good for Tennessee, and they should be able to win this game if all things go according to plan. Maddie, kind of your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a good matchup, especially at home for the Volunteers. Like you said, there are a couple of spots that we should be concerned about when it comes to this game. But like I said, I think the backcourt wins this game for Tennessee, no problem. Especially you've got Lanier, you've got Zakai Ziegler going off, especially with those high assist numbers. I think that is going to be one of the biggest things against this team in Syracuse is to be able to make that extra pass, get the open shot, and turn this thing into a scoring race.
Yeah, absolutely. Ken Palm has this game at 83-63, Tennessee at 97%. I'm going Vols. You?
Going balls as well.
Okay, let's move on because that is the biggest blowout so far that we've got on the paper. Let's go to this next one. Both these teams were in the championship game in their MTE, but both came up a little short in that game. For Ole Miss, it was about a half second short against Purdue, but this is a good opportunity for both teams and a huge road test for Ole Miss. Maddie, your thoughts on Louisville and Ole Miss and the trip there to the KFC Yum Center?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier. This Louisville team is definitely looking better than we thought they were going to, especially coming off of, kind of a new system, new program,
Good
a
trip to
lot of
Atlantis as
turnaround.
well, ended up in that championship game.
Definitely so. But I think this is going to be a good matchup for Ole Miss. Really show us kind of what they're made of here in this big road test. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup because both of these teams have a little bit different style of plays, but both of them are kind of needing that extra jump to put themselves out there. So I think this is going to be an just a game that shows us who Ole
Which
Miss is.
team is what? Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Exactly.
I think this is one of the most fascinating matchups of the week. Both these teams are kind of on the brink of a breakthrough, right? Both these teams have good rosters. They're trying to usher in a new era of basketball and, really just spark the program after these MTEs. And they just came up a little bit short there, but they got some momentum right now. Whoever wins this is going to come away with that momentum and a good win. I think where this game is most fascinating is going to be who wins the backcourt for Louisville. Chucky Hepburn, Terrence Edwards, and Renee Smith. For Ole Miss, it's Sean Padula, Jalen Murray, and Matthew Morrell. Chucky Hepburn is a guy that's gotten a start in every game he's played in college basketball, it feels like. He can score, he can facilitate, he can rebound. He's averaging 1.67 points per shot. This guy is hitting. Um, big volume, big value score for this team. But another player you're going to have to keep an eye on is also Noah Waterman there and his ability to stretch the floor in the front court. I think that's Breakfield's guy. He's got to be able to guard him in this game if Noah Waterman sees some decent minutes. He played in that BYU system there for Mark Pope, and he can stretch that floor, may cause you problems. This one's a good one. Kim Palm has this game 76-72. Louisville at 36%. It's a road game, and Louisville fans really excited this season about the way things are going for Pat Kelsey. Maddie, who you taking in this one?
I'm taking the home team here. Home court advantage is going to be huge in this game. And, there's been a lot of teams that these Ole Miss fans haven't faced, like Louisville.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a tough environment, and I think Louisville is going to scrape by with this one.
Scrape by. That 4-point margin might be spot on, is what you're telling me. I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go Ole Miss on the road here. I like Chris Beard. I like his chance here to get a huge win for the program and build that momentum going forward. I think Ole Miss is a really good basketball team, and here's a really good chance to do some damage on the road. Obviously, the story that college basketball wants is Louisville. The story that Ole Miss wants is to come in and get a big win in the KFC Yum Center. There's gonna be some make it or break it games in this challenge for the SEC. There are many more games on Tuesday night, and here's some of those here are those matchups. Georgia faces Notre Dame. LSU gets Florida State. Missouri plays Cal. Missouri should win that game. Cal stinks. Oklahoma takes on Georgia Tech. South Carolina hits the road and plays Boston College, and Texas A&M faces Wake Forest. Yeah, pretty good. That's the bulk. That's the majority of the games in the SEC ACC challenge, but we still got a Wednesday night ahead, and there are some huge road tests that are going to really shake up the way that the ACC SEC challenge is going to go. Let's talk about some of those, Maddie.
Yeah, that huge road test that a lot of people are going to have eyes on is going to be the rematch from last year's Sweet 16 when Alabama goes to Chapel Hill to face the Tar Heels. David, you've been calling this one the RJ Davis revenge game.
Yeah,
So
it's a little bit like that. RJ Davis had the worst game of his season shooting in that Sweet 16 game against Alabama, and a game where the margins were really like razor thin. That made a big difference. And RJ Davis has probably had the opportunity of this game cross his mind once or twice throughout the course of the offseason. It's also the Jaron Stevenson game. The Alabama forward heads back home. He's from this area. He's from North Carolina, so this is a big one. Personal opinion, bet the over if you're a gambler. That would be, I'm not giving gambling advice, but I would consider that. We're going to see so many points in this game. If you smell a crispy burning sensation out there on the track, it might be a little bit of shake and a little bit of bake is how it's going on there. The two teams want to get out and run. They're going to move like a NASCAR race. They want volume. They want maximum offensive possessions. One thing I will say about these two teams coming out of November, both these teams have been battle tested against very good competition. So this one's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Maddie, thoughts on North Carolina, Alabama?
yeah, I mean, I think you put it clearly when I don't know if it's technically RJ Davis revenge game, but it is going to be a lot of hatred.
Yeah, it's
A
it's going to
lot
be.
of hatred with these two programs. So I think we're going to see a very, very interesting game. You've got some guys that, obviously were in this game last year. You got some guys that know SEC play that have transferred in and out. So I think it's one of those games that it could go either way. But I think Alabama's kind of realizing they've got some stuff to prove, and I think that they are going to be very headstrong going into this game and make sure and work on some of those late game shots that they missed against Oregon.
We also want to see a better game from Mark Sears. It's been a minute, and the numbers just haven't been there yet for him. And he's not playing like Mark Sears yet. And he's a player that we want to see a little bit more out of. And this is a game that was supposed to be headlined by Mark Sears and RJ Davis, both being Player of the Year candidates. I think both of them are still in that race. It's just Janai Broome has a lead right now out there in Auburn. So let's see if one of these players can make a statement in this one. North Carolina is a team that has been that's going to be a team to be dealt with this season. North Carolina is picked toward the top of the ACC this year. We already talked about RJ Davis and the kind of nights he's averaging. He's averaging nearly about 18 points a night right now. North Carolina is going to be a team that's going to want to be in this track meet big time. And then you got other guys out there in that backcourt. They're going to be hard to deal with. North Carolina, Trimble, Ian Jackson, Kadu. But this front court's very good too. It's got some guys like Vin Allen Lubin, Cade Tyson. Those guys haven't quite lived up to the expectations yet, but they've got a chance here. This is a game that, if it was on a neutral court, I still wouldn't know which way to go in this one. It's one that, you can coin flip it about 50 times and it'd probably be just as accurate. Maddie,
Yep.
this is going to be
Kim
a tough
Palm. Yeah. Oh, it was going to be a tough game for sure.
one. Yeah.
But Kim Palm's got this one 89-87. North Carolina edging it out at 44% confidence. David, who are you going with this question?
I'm going to say these next two games, I'm going to be wrong on one of them. One of them's going to win. One of them's going to win, but these are big road tests, so I'm going to go with the home team here. I'm going to go North Carolina in this one. I think North Carolina needs a big test, and we're not seeing the best basketball right now from Alabama, so this is the one I feel the most confident in. But, could this be the turnaround game for Alabama? I'm going North Carolina. I'm going to be wrong between one of the two games between Auburn and Duke and Alabama, North Carolina, but I'm picking Tar Heels in this one.
I'm going with the upset. I'm going to go Bama. I think that they are going to be hungry after that game that they should have won in the Players Era Fest. And I think that Nate Oates is going to beat his team into submission and make them win a basketball game.
Well, okay, so a team that is playing some really darn good basketball. Is there a tougher stretch of basketball games? Auburn has beaten Iowa State, North Carolina, and a red-hot Memphis team, and now they're going to Cameron Indoor to face the Duke Blue Devils. It's one of the most legendary venues in sport. A trip there is on a lot of people's bucket list, but it's a good one. ESPN is going to be selling the Cooper Flagg versus Janai Broom game like crazy. Maddie, your thoughts on this game as we get started and take a look here at a battle of blue bloods? Question mark.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, how does Duke's Golden Boy match up against a veteran, rough and tough big man like Janai Broom? I don't think there's much of a question here, honestly. I think we'll hear David's favorite joke play out, and we'll get to hear it all about how Johnny Broom is Cooper Flagg's daddy by the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean we're gonna be making some jokes probably, but we'll see. Um, this Cameron Indoor's hard, man. And
Mhm.
the funny thing is that Auburn's gonna walk into this. What is Cameron Indoor before? I know it's tiny. It's capacity. All right, here it is. Yeah, it's like 10,000 people. And it's loud, it's nuts, it's crazy. Auburn's gonna walk into this game, look around this building at the start of the game, and they're gonna go, "Is this what our fans have do to people? Like this is like Neville." Well, yeah, it's going to be a lot like that, except this time Neville's against it. That's what Cameron Indoor is going to feel like, and it's going to be a tough environment to play some basketball in this game. Just to give a breakdown here for Duke, Duke is running a lot of four guard, one center is how they're playing this game. Cooper Flagg is the headline player nationally. He's a guard. He's a forward in a forward type body. A really utility style game naturally because of his game, he makes a lot of hard matchup opportunities in this game. And so I don't know how Pearl's necessarily going to attack it. CBM or Chaney Johnson, who do you put on? And Chaney Johnson is your better rated defender, but the difference on the defensive rating is like 2 points when you look at the analytic numbers there in the advanced stats. But both guys are sub 100. Take your pick who you're going to put on who. I lean toward that Johnson gets put on Flagg because you're also going to have to figure out how to deal with Con Knippel. Knippel's role on this team is really the scorer when Flagg is heavily guarded or is having a tough night. He can score and become a serious problem. Thing is, he isn't hitting at a high proficiency numbers yet. But this backcourt still has a lot of options beyond them. Tyrese Proctor is going to be your starting point, and he's got good size for a point guard, kind of like Anthony Black was a problem a few years ago when Arkansas had him. He's got about 4 to 5 inches on Pettiford and JP Pegues, and he's going to be it's going to be tough for those two. So it's going to be three or paint for Tyrese Proctor is kind of how he plays this game, and that size matchup might allow him to get the paint a little more often than he has been here lately. And he knows how to look for a good shot, and he hits it three at a good rate. And then Sion James and Caleb Foster are going to be your two other role-playing guards coming in from the bench for Duke. On average, they're going to give Duke a combined 16 to 17 points a game. The five spot is more of a balanced approach for Duke between I'm going to mispronounce this, even though I've seen him play basketball a couple of times and I've heard it in my ears. Common Malak and then Malik Brown. Malak is your bigger scorer, while Malik Brown is your better defender. And that's kind of how they're going to see about a balanced portion of minutes here for Duke if it kind of goes as normal. Maddie, how do you think Auburn kind of compares in this game?
Yeah, I mean you've got a solid backcourt here with Duke. I think that's kind of what's going to outmatch Auburn. I think Auburn's going to, if they're going to win this game, it's going to be in the front court. I think you've got Janai Broom, who is going to be able to lead this team when it comes to points, when it comes to defense. But I think the real battle is going to be in the backcourt.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough competition there in that five spot there. But to me, like Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell, that combination wins that five spot battle for Auburn in this game. And it's really going to come down to what kind of defensive performance guys like Denver Jones, Tahad Pettiford, and JP McGee's are going to have against the rest of this Duke backcourt. Flagg and Knippel between those two, if they're going to find a way to put up points. That's going to happen. So you got to shut down everyone else. You can't allow any other production in other places. You got to figure out how you're going to shut down Proctor. You got to figure out how you're going to shut down Caleb Foster from putting up solid numbers. What role player shuts down what role player is really going to make a big difference in this game. Winning in the margins, which we talked about in that episode on Saturday, that's what Auburn did in Maui. Both these teams are really good defenses. They're really good offenses. This is a high level basketball game, and things are going to be, just blown up nationally as well. There's going to be a lot of attention, a lot of bright lights in this game. And how are you going to handle that? You have Auburn, who's a super experienced team, has played in some big time basketball games thus far. And then you have Duke. You have Duke, who's got Cooper Flagg and Conkadipple out there turning over the basketball in late game situations against really good competition. But that was all on neutral sites, too. They're in Cameron Indoor this time. So, how big of a factor does the crowd play in this game? Both these teams, like I said, high level competition, but right now against those teams, Duke is 1-2 against P5 competition, and they're 0-2 in games decided by 5 points or less. Auburn's 3-0 and 2-0 in those games. Does it come down to Cameron Indoor, or does it come down to inexperience and mistakes? Does that experience pay big dividends for Auburn on the road? Kim Palm has this game 73-71 Duke at 44%. Maddie, who you going with?
I'm going experience here. I'm going to go with Auburn.
All right. So you're going with two huge SEC upsets against the two ACC favorites. That's going to be wild if that's how it pans out. Again, I'm going to be wrong on one of these two games. I like Auburn's chances for an upset in this one, but I'm going Duke. I'm going Duke because Cameron Indoor is hell. And that's going to be a really, really tough place to play basketball. And I honestly, Auburn's so hot right now that they are kind of overdue for a letdown as well. So I think a desperate Duke team that needs a win to keep momentum going for their season. They're not super desperate, but they do need a good win on their resume, and they got an opportunity here at home against a really good team. And you got two guys who are going to be super big time NBA draft picks on your team, and along with experience with Tyrese Proctor. I'm going Cameron Indoor, not Duke, to win this game. That's how I'm playing this one out. So yeah, put the Devils on the board for me, but it's going to be tough. And as always, Duke.
Well, David, with the way that Florida played in the ESPN Events Invitational, you've kind of got to wonder, does Virginia even have a slight chance in Gainesville?
I mean, it's somewhere in the margins. Yeah, if Florida doesn't play great. It's right there. For guys, if you are choosing tuning in because it is the end of football season, you're kind of checking out basketball right now. Virginia has had a tough start to the season all around. For those of you who are not following the story, Virginia's national championship winning coach Tony Bennett retired right before the seasons began. The program has had a pretty tough run of things so far. They aren't taking any bad losses, but they're not impressing by any means either. Real simple. The key really to Virginia or to the Virginia game is how you play them in tempo and how you can force them in this game. A couple players to keep your eyes on though for Virginia. Isaac McNeely, he can hit threes. He's averaging right now 3 3-point field goals a game. He's putting up about 13.5 points a night at 13.3. And then Jacob Coffey's a really good rebounder as well, 16.4 points per game. And then Andrew Rode is someone to keep an eye on for this Virginia team. He can help facilitate the ball. You got some really good players here for Virginia, but like I said, it's a team that right now, because of circumstances, this would have been a better game to talk about at the beginning of the year. We would have been a much more competitive one because Tony Bennett was a great coach. But for me, real simple in this game, the key to beating Virginia for Florida is to speed up their game, not let them control the tempo of the game. Virginia can tear you apart from their passing screens and design plays if you let them run through their offense comfortably. So for Florida, it's going to be about creating possessions and dictating where the ball is going on the defensive end, speed them up, make them uncomfortable, and then let your home crowd get out there and win it for you. That's kind of my opinion on this one because Virginia is very methodical. They're very slow. This is going to be one of the slowest basketball teams you ever see in college basketball. But you speed them up, you're going to win the game. If you let them sit in there and play at their pace, they'll eat you alive. But that's kind of the for Virginia the key to the game is run your offense. For Florida, be aggressive, be attacking, and get them uncomfortable. Maddie, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we look here. Walter Clayton, he is gonna get those shots, get them in quick, and move up the pace of this game. Got Alex Condon, who is gonna be able to grab a rebound, basically make it look like a transitional style play because of his athleticism, way to move the ball up the floor. And then you also got to look at Martin, who has been excellent on defense, getting steals, jumping into passing lanes, disrupting kind of the game that Virginia is going to want to play. So I think, like you said, the key here is going to be pace. It's going to be tempo. And I think Florida's got the right guys to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Florida's got the team, they've got the talent, and they look like a darn good basketball team early in the year. So surprise, other than a letdown, yeah, I would expect a lot of good things out of Florida in this one. What's the computer say, Maddie?
Yep. So Kim Palm has this game at 74-59, Florida at a 91% confidence rate. So obviously the highest
Yeah,
margin of victory that we've seen so far when it comes to Kim Palm. And I think they're right about this one. I think Florida is going to take this game away pretty easily.
yeah, it's not the biggest margin, but it's the highest. Well, it might be the highest confidence. I don't know. Like Tennessee, Syracuse, and Florida, Virginia are probably the biggest flip mismatches here, but they're programs that we need to talk about because they are high watch programs. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm with you, Gators all day in this one. I don't think they're going to drop it at home against Virginia in this one. Your Wednesday night games also on the table. Mississippi State plays Pitt. That one's going to be tough. That's going to be a really tough game for Mississippi State in that one, but that's a chance for a really good win if you're Mississippi State after they unfortunate loss there to Butler in the championship game of the Arizona tip-off. You get that Pitt game, you're feeling really darn good about yourself. Texas hits the road to play North Carolina State, and then Virginia is also, or not Virginia, Vanderbilt is also on the road against Virginia Tech. That's how I was going to say it. Big test there for Mark Byington and that one, and one that I think Vandy's got a real chance to go on the road and get a good quad two win if you're the Commodores. Really, really good chance here. All right, Maddie.
Yeah, I mean we've got a lot of good matchups. We've got a lot of kind of clashes that could go one way or another. I think this is a good challenge. So last year the challenge ended up in a tie.
Yeah.
I think, there's a possibility we could see it again, but also the question is who wins it this season. And I don't think it's anywhere near as close as it was last year. Ken Palm has it at 12-4 SEC as of Black Friday. So, David, who are you going with, and what is your total in this challenge?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. So 16 games across this whole thing. Yeah, look, the SEC is really darn good, but the biggest thing that they going to give the ACC a chance is the home games because it's always tough to win on the road. And the SEC, like the four teams that like we were all kind of like these teams should be somewhere in the top five, or the top five or whatever. When you look at it, a lot of the teams you expect to win if it was on a neutral site or at home they're on the road in this challenge. And so we're going to see some surprises here. You're going to see some things that, are going to be a little bit in this one. So I'm going to go SEC is going to win this one. But I'm going to be wrong about one of those road games between Alabama and North Carolina and, Duke Auburn. So I'm going to go with this one and I'm going to say the SEC takes it 13 to, I'm going to go 13-3. I'm going to go absolutely wild here, and I'm going to say it's a blowout. I'm probably wrong. I'm probably wrong. Some SEC team's going to get upset at home because they have a bad night. But I'm going 13-3 because I mean, that's my confidence right now that the SEC is going to win this thing. It'll probably be lower. It'll probably be somewhere around 11-10, but like SEC's winning this thing all day.
Definitely. But I agree with Kim Palm here. Looking at the matchup, who's at home, who's on the road, I think I'm going to be wrong about one of those higher caliber games. Like you mentioned with Alabama and North Carolina and Auburn Duke, I think one of those are going to go against my well wishes. But 12-4 seems pretty consistent, and that's where I'm going to put my wins and losses.
Okay, 12-4. So you're sticking with the Ken Pom model right now, what it had to say on Black Friday. Okay, good deal. Yeah, this is going to be a really good challenge and one's a lot of fun. We're going to be covering it all week long. All right, guys, we got some sad news on Saturday night. Legendary St. John's basketball coach Louis Carnesecca passed away at the age of 99. He was the coach at St. John's when St. John's joined the Big East and was founded, and he had the nickname of Lovable Louie. Carnesecca was a two-time National Coach of the Year and three-time Big East Coach of the Year. He was enshrined in the National Basketball Hall of Fame in 1992. In addition to his tenure at St. John's, he also coached the New York Nets while they were part of the ABA. He won more than 500 games in his 24 seasons at St. John's, taking that team to the Final Four in 1985. He led St. John's to the postseason every year he was coach there. A lot of you, longtime listeners of the show, know I'm a Big East basketball fan and college basketball history fan. The history of the 80s and the Big East is what I'm a fan of. And so I've got teams that I like out there as well. Some of you might have heard me say that my third favorite team is the Providence Friars, which seems like a really random team to like unless you know your history. Louis Carnesecca is a legend in that conference, an absolute legend. And my favorite Louis Carnesecca story is, of course, the sweater game. The story goes that Louis got sick and he was wearing an ugly sweater during his this period of when he had like a cold. He said he got the sweater from an Italian Olympic coach, Chris Mullin. In this game, he's wearing the sweater. Chris Mullin goes out and he hits a buzzer beater shot. St. John starts winning games, so that he had to start wearing the sweater every game because he considered it lucky. And it was the ugliest sweater you ever seen in your life. And the players were making fun of him and saying things like, "Coach, where in the world did you get that thing?" But they were winning, and he wasn't taking it off. and Louis and Louis going around telling people that he's not winning because of his coaching ability, but because it's the sweater. The sweater's doing everything for him. Well, eventually, St. John's is ranked number one in the country, and they have this huge game in New York against Georgetown, who is ranked number two. Well, another legend of the game, John Thompson, comes into the game wearing a heavy coat. He's wearing his coat, and he comes in, and he's kind of holding it tight, and he comes in the arena and pulls the coat open and reveals that he is wearing a matching ugly sweater to the one that Looney Carnesecca is wearing. Whole arena freaks out over this moment. People are laughing at it. It's taking the tension out of this huge basketball game that is just a, you know, pro St. John's crowd. And John Thompson, what he did was is that he had a player he sent down to a St. John's bookstore to find a replica of the sweater. Georgetown goes down. Georgetown goes there and upsets St. John's in New York. Years later, in a 30 for 30 called Requiem for the Big East on ESPN, Carnesecca said, "I didn't mind him upstaging me with the sweater, but when he beat me, that really hurt." Later that year, both teams would be in the Final Four and they would face each other again. It's funny. I was thinking about the Final Four when I was putting together this week's show when we talked about how great the Big East, or how great the SEC is this year. That was the same year right there that the Big East broke the record for the most teams in the Final Four. Looney Carnesecca was a part of that. He broke records. He influenced lives. He made memories for fans. He is, of course, a legend of this game, and he will be dearly missed and always loved by the college basketball community. Guys, if you have not already, please like and subscribe to the Hoops Southbound show. We greatly appreciate it. We love having you guys here. It's going to be a great season, going to be a great challenge, and we're coming back this week. I'm going to be doing rebound episodes on Tuesday and Wednesday night. We'll see if Maddie joins me, and then we're going to be previewing on Thursday morning or sometime in that medium there what's going to be a massive weekend as well of college basketball. This is a big week of hoops. You need to stay here, and you need to join us and anybody who's talking SEC basketball right now because this is going to be a wild week of college basketball. So guys, please like and subscribe. We'd love to have you here. Join us all season long as we talk SEC basketball. And until next time, we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.